Welcome to Paranormal UK Radio, created by Irene Ann and Mark Johnson. Twin Souls is hosted by myself, Philip, along with my twin brother, Ronald Kinella, in association with the Paranormal UK Radio Network. A very warm welcome to all our listeners. Now, our subject matter tonight is destiny. Is our future preordained, or is it created by chance? Hello, Ronald.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. So, what's your take on destiny? How do you see it?
Well, some people can see it in different ways. Some people see it as being based on environment, the upbringing. Others see it as you said, preordained. I don't know. It's a tough one, but I do tend to think that, especially with you and me, and perhaps other people, that it's quite possible that it was formed, or rather, I would say, preordained, because of what we went through and what we did, even when we were younger, and being steered into a direction that we had no idea or knowledge we wanted to take.
There'll be some people, of course, in the academic world who would disagree and say that, our future is met just by chance, but that's almost like saying, about the creation of the universe.
Yeah, you will have people arguing and contesting any view you put on, so we've got nothing to lose but discussing this.
Yes, well, I think it's nice for us to talk about destiny. I think a lot of people would be interested to know whether or not their lives are preordained, whether or not their life has purpose, has meaning to it, or it's just basically a random set of, variables that are just, pushed out into the future that just happen randomly. So tell us a few things about, the things that we've both gone through.
Yeah, an example of this, and I'm going to put this quite clearly, is the fact that when we were younger, certainly I was younger, we went to a school in Luton, a junior school. It was quite a lovely school. It was Victorian, and the teacher there, this particular teacher I had, we had her for all the lessons. And I don't mind telling you that she was a bit of a dragon. I can't give her name because that would be appalling of me, but she basically governed us throughout all the lessons, and I think we had her for a year. Now, while I was in her class, I admit, and I was lazy as a child. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was frightened of the world, and I knew that I was interested a little bit of science fiction, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. So in this class, I never learned English. I was terrible at it. I cheated at spelling, but my head was always in the clouds. There was always a drawing towards an alternative world. Why this one didn't satisfy me, I have no idea. I wasn't unhappy. Why I was drawn to these alternative worlds, I cannot tell you, but I was always looking out the window and dreaming. This teacher called me quite a number of times, many times, dreaming. Because of me, my alternative visions I had of these other worlds, these fantastic worlds, I was reprimanded, I was punished, and it just led to all sorts of problems. And even then, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I know I loved writing, but my grammar was atrocious. Here's an example for you what the teacher did. She pulled me out of class and told me that basically my writing was atrocious. What she did was she gave us some homework, and I wrote this story about the Daleks, because I loved the Daleks then. I thought they were fantastic. And she picked mine out because she knew I couldn't spell them. As I said, the grammar was appalling. And she read it out deliberately fast because I hadn't added any full stops, and she went faster and faster. And then she slammed the paper and said, "Where's your full stops? Where's your grammar? Where's your bloody punctuation?" So I was armed with such little education, with a dream so huge it was unbelievable. But this thing that drove me to do what I wanted to do was so huge, it just seemed to steer me in that direction. Just seemed to keep pushing me again and again through all the odds against class. I knew I wanted to then be a writer.
Yes, and I remembered the story of when we had gone back to the school, when we had subsequently left to go to a higher school, that this teacher asked you what it is that you wanted to do in the future. So, what was her response to that?
Yes, our sister went to this school when we left because we went to high school, and she had the same tutor. And Philip and I went to see a play with our sister in. And the teacher came up to me and she said, "So how are you doing?" I said, "Doing very well, thank you." She said, "And what do you want to be when you leave school?" I said, "I'd like to be a writer." And she said, "If there's anything to go by your punctuation, you have my sympathy." Well, at the time, I must have been stupid because I didn't realise how insulting that was. But that didn't thwart me at all. But if you remember, Philip, at the time, you and I also acted. We were doing acting, weren't we? We were acting.
Yes, I mean, we used to spend a lot of time, like, back in the early 80s, I mean, definitely, you didn't have all of the tools that you have today, like the mobile phone or the tablets or the amazing computers we have today, although we did have the very first home indoor computer, which was one of the first, which was the ZX81, which was incredible then. But yes, we used to act. We used to spend our time acting because we both, as twins, wanted to be actors. And going back to this thing about destiny, sometimes when you look back at the way that you're steered in certain directions through life, it could be that there are people who are planted to try and gear you into that direction. So I think sometimes, someone's negative response will spur you, will give you determination to move on forward to ultimately to the goal that you set out previously.
Well, I was going to say she certainly didn't.
No,
but we used to remember when we were about 9. We had this record player because, of course, then when we're not old, it makes you sound old, but it's true. We didn't have DVDs; they weren't invented. Didn't have internet. CNN didn't exist. You had nothing like that. But we had a record player. And we used to play records, and there was a teacher that fascinated us in high school, and she was a math teacher, and I have to say, she was absolutely smashing.
She was Australian, wasn't she?
Yes, and give her name, because we absolutely loved her. And
Miss Horton.
Miss Horton, that's right. There was something quite distinct about Miss Horton. So Philip and I made up these characters in her. When we went home, we used to put on our record, and we would take on her persona, that's the way of putting it, and pick up one of our plastic ray guns and pretend she was this governor on this ship persecuting these children.
But she was never like that. She was a really lovely teacher.
We just invented stories like that.
Yeah, she was a character though, wasn't she? I mean, she really did. And there's a thing about, humanity with certain people. You always remember the bad ones, but we very seldom remember the good ones. And we can state categorically that those good souls had also believed in us, even when we were young and we had these dreams. It's important for adults to, give a lot of the younger generation motivation to fuel their dreams, as it were.
Yeah, she did.
She did indeed.
Miss Horton, yes. And so she was I don't know what it was, we were just fascinated by her. So we made up these stories. We used to go home. When we'd done our homework, then we got it done. And we used to put on the record, and Philip and I would take turns to put on, as I said, her persona and do these ridiculous scenarios with this ray gun. Now, little did we know, and this continued on with different characters we invented then, used to act in front of each other to the tunes of music. Miss Horton we used, ironically, from Go With The Venturers.
Yes,
and the track was called Escape.
Escape, that's right.
We played it again and again. The record was probably worn down. But Philip used to prop the needle onto the record and then lower it when I was ready, and then we'd start our act. But what we didn't realise, what we didn't know at the time, and we didn't, was that unconsciously we are setting the scene for our writing to begin creating characters where you can, instead of because to have a whole production would cost you money and time and effort, we were setting the stage for books.
We were dreaming, and the thing is, though, that, even at school, both of us were a little bit of dreamers. I mean, I remember, in those days, you had your classic bullies, didn't you, and the hard gang and the weak gang, and we were definitely in the weak gang. But one of the things is that we always knew that we wanted to write. We always knew that we wanted to create. And it's just that, people in life and events in life do, I believe, shape, ultimately, the crafting of that destiny. So, and especially about developing characters, fascinated by people. And of course, what we found was really amazing was that when we used to make something up about someone, it ended up they were like that character, or something like that would happen.
Yes, that's quite uncanny, because we weren't far wrong for their own characters, were we?
That's right.
I mean, in the case of Miss Horton, she was absolutely fantastic. I mean, this is I want to explain to our lovely listeners what she was like, this wonderful woman. I had been bought then a digital alarm watch, which was a new thing then, to have a digital alarm on it. I think it was 1982 or 1981 or 2, and I was showing it off to the pupils in the class, and Miss Horton had enough, and she humorously took it off, but she said, "Let me have it." So she put it in the next room,
the back room,
and she pretended to use a hammer to smash it, because you could hear her go, and then it went, and then she came out with a smile. Well, about 25 minutes later, the alarm went off.
I was there. We were in the same class.
She absolutely, she giggled at that. She was smashing.
God bless Miss Horton.
Miss Horton, yeah.
And, the other thing as well, I remembered we were fascinated with Tove Jansson as well, her creation of the Moomins, which I have mentioned a few times before, because I remembered, we tried to get 5p from my mum, I think, from the school jumble cell, and there the
she
book
gave
was.
us more than that.
Yeah, for the book. And I remembered I was fascinated by her tales, and even then, the seed had been sown with regards to these alternative worlds that we wanted to create. So I am of the firm conviction that we start mapping our destiny, from an early age. But I also feel that we also map it on what we call the other side, on this other side of life before we're born. And we do have, we have that thing called free will. I know I've heard people saying before, where they've been to a clairvoyant medium and the medium's told them their future, and more times than not, that future pans out. But, I've always said, what happens if that person picks up a gun and shoots all the people around them and they've changed their life? That changes all the variables, with regards to their future outcome.
Yes.
But the medium has seen before that, none of that happening. So I do believe that there is a degree of free will. We know what's right and what's wrong, and I believe that what clairvoyance is picking up on is that good nature view of where you will be going should you, do things correctly.
I also think it's very important that we do know that there are situations, it depends on your environment, your upbringing, about what you're to become or what you will be. Yes, we know that. But we're talking about it from a personal point of view. I mean, as I said, when I was at school, I used to dream out the window about these fantastical worlds. I mean, I can't explain to you how absolutely terrified I was of the world, and I was terrified of the world. I was frightened of it. I was frightened of people, and when you look around at you now at the world, it's no surprise. But then I was horrified. I suppose that's why we had this escape where we used to even make costumes with Grandma. Do you remember we used to make costumes and robots out of boxes? Yeah. We used to build these robot characters. I remember one was a dog that Philip and I had developed when we were about, I would say about 9 years old as well.
It was.
Where we put together this dog. We'd use this toy box and put the Lego box on top of it to make his head, and we had his ears, and it's amazing. We actually breathed life into this thing. I know it sounds ridiculous, but we actually believed he was a real character. So even at the age of 9, I would say perhaps 8.5 to 9, we were seeing inanimate objects and actually imagining them to be real. Well, I mean, it's like the bullies. When we were bullied at school, I was imagined having some kind of huge robot guardian with me and Philip to protect us from them. And God knows I wished I'd had one. But I suppose these are where the ideas are drawn out from, the linchpin for the future.
I mean, I used to believe that I had special powers. Do you remember when we used to believe we could time travel as well too? Because we were into Doctor Who. We loved our 2000 AD comics. For those listeners that are not aware of that, there used to be some characters called ABC Warriors, and you had Hammerstein and Rojaws, which I found absolutely fascinating. So going back to the robot dog that both Ron and I were creating, I can categorically state that he was and did begin to take shape in our later life as Magnus the Micromar.
Yes, I mean, even to the point, this dog wouldn't go away, and it's not canine, it's not things like that. People will bring this up, oh, you were influenced by canine. Yes, we saw him, but this was what we wanted, even before we saw him. Robot dogs aren't uncommon. Let's be honest, it's an animate object. I mean, they're man's best friend. So to have a metal one, a tireless one, and one that's quite extraordinary was, to me and Philip, a dream come true. When we were, I think, 12. I think we were 12.
I think it was about 12.
We tried to make it out of beer cans.
Beer cans, yes. We tried to make our robot dog, a real robot dog, out of beer cans, ladies and gentlemen. And, it was a poor attempt because at that point, we didn't have the technology. We had the vision, but not the technology
We would never even then have got it to walk. I mean, but it was the idea that was needed.
Then later on, we started, because we've always drawn, we started to develop our drawing skills, and then we started to create this character called Magnus the Micromut, which is a cybernetic dog with a personality and a really cute thing, a superhero if you like. And then what happened was that because we wanted to be writers, we didn't realise just how competitive the market with books authorship was, and my goodness me, was it competitive.
Yes.
Because we weren't accepted by publishers, we kept getting rejection slips all the time. We wanted to find out, where we were going wrong.
Well, prior to that, before we go down that road, is that we also used to write each other stories. Do you remember?
Yes.
We used to try and make each other laugh, so there was humour there, as well as the science fiction element. And we would write out these scribble on these pages and do these stories about rich people living in houses, but make it very humorous. I can't explain, it's very hard for me to try and describe at that time what we were doing, but we'd invented these characters, and they were pompous and lordly and all that, and we just wrote to make out who could make one another laugh the most. And that's where the humour came into it as well, wasn't it? There was always humour.
I remembered when we wrote the first book ever that we sent to Hodder and Stoughton.
Oh, yes.
It was called Uncle Ned Builds Madeline, and we were heavily influenced by Kinella, who had written this music called The Lost Opera. And we were influenced not just by the music, but we created this alternative world where Uncle Nad, who later became Professor Howard, built Madeline, a female robot that went a bit AWOL. And I remembered when our grandmother sent it off to Hodder and Stoughton for us, the biggest publishers in one of the biggest publishers in the world, and it came back with a rejection letter. And both Ron and I sat on the steps before we went to school, crying our eyes out. Can you remember?
Yeah, well, I think
we banged the whole thing out on an old typewriter.
We were 14 then.
Yes, we were 14.
14, I think, 14 and a half.
Yeah.
But that was the beginning of the horror of having to actually realise what the commercial world really was. We weren't under any illusion. I mean, yes, you're going to give it your first shot, but then you had to take a step back and think, right, we've got to work on this. I mean, 14, you're not going to get very far. At the time then, you wouldn't have done, because you had to really craft your work.
Yeah.
So we had many years of dedication into it. But it wasn't all bad, was it?
No,
I mean, we had some
fun.
great fun doing that, didn't we?
Yeah.
But and we still acted even then.
Yeah.
And then more into the computers came along.
Yeah.
We started learning about the programming of them. Of course, they had an influence with the robot characters, because I myself personally learned to program the first computers, the ZX81, the ZX Spectrum. They used a language called BASIC, which means, and I haven't looked this up, not off by heart, Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code, which basically is an interpreter to make it easier to program them. But I was writing hundreds of lines of code and actually developing my own games. But what this was also doing was teaching me about computers and possibly reflecting the future of robotics.
Yes, that's right, because I know that you did try to make a robot, and you plugged it into the ZX Spectrum, it blew the Spectrum.
Yes, it did.
And Spectrum, the company that dealt with the Spectrum, very kindly sent us a new one.
Yeah.
After telling them it just burnt out.
Oh, that was many years ago. You may have put us in the.
But going back to the creation of the writing and of the illustrating, do you remember also when we did that that section of cartoons with the what were those things, the Slugatons and the Gobos, and we'd written this huge manuscript and illustrated it, and again sent it to Hodder and Stoughton, and we had a letter back from them. They were very kind, very good, very
they were lovely. They were lovely.
And they said one of the editors has stuck one of the pictures of the creatures on their notice board because they thought it was so cool, and they sent us a couple of free books. So, I think really, to be honest with you, that kind of gave us the motivation to carry on. A lot of young people today need that motivation, need that support from their peers to try and, get them in the right direction. So let's go on with Magnus and Micromat, because I think our readers might like to know what listeners would like to know. Sorry, our listeners would like to know about, what the story behind Magnus and Micromat, the robotic dog, and where in Destiny that led us. What happened?
Yes, I mean, although I'm going to say it, he is not my most favourite of character. I mean, even though we tried to build him, but he's had a long past. He was first developed seriously in 1994 when Philip and I put together comic strips. We thought the next ambitious adventure we would take is to try and sell him to newspapers.
Yes.
And we thought, well, we knew he was humorous, he was naughty. You've got to give a sort of like a character assessment of him. He's naughty, very mischievous, and but lovable. I know he's different, he's a robot, but we thought we'd stick him in with a normal household family and see how they could tend with him. So we developed these, I think there were 12 or 14 comic strips.
I think there were, yes.
Of him, and we sent them out to several newspapers. The trouble is, I can't remember which newspapers we sent them to. We've got a filing cabinet there, and I've got some responses. We've kept every response we have back, but they were very kind. I mean, they wrote back and said that he's a bit too radical, which I suppose he would be at the time for them. But one of the newspapers was very kind. They sent us a copy of Andy Capp.
Oh, yes.
Andy Capp, cartoonist who did him. Absolutely beautiful of his newspaper to do this, really smashing of them. And it was the original format of Andy Capp, and I was surprised at how big the boxes were.
Yes,
whereas we had done Magnus, the Micromat on small 3-boxed squares. These were quite big. I mean, so we had to reconsider that, the formatting of what they preferred. And on top of that, we had to heed to their wise words that he was just too radical. So after that, what we did was we didn't give up with him. We decided to put him into book format. But then, in the early 90s, getting a book published was either nigh impossible, or if you want to do it yourself, damn expensive. Absolutely horrendous. Now it's easy. We have means of producing them by companies that are far, far cheaper.
Yeah.
But then it was a nightmare. But we did self-publish him to begin with, didn't we?
Yes, we actually went to printers that could print, say, about 150 copies for about 130 quid then, which was still a lot of money.
Yeah.
But what the intention was that all of these little books, these Magnus and Micromat books they were illustrated very, we did very fine art with Magnus.
It was with him and the Queen. We thought we'd do a humorous one in 93 of him visiting Buckingham Palace because he's such a naughty dog and Her Majesty the Queen loves dogs. We thought she was the only one who could train him. So he's taken to the palace to be trained by Her Majesty. Yeah. So this is the format it took.
Yeah, so we had little signing sessions at the place where we worked, and they went very well, but the publishers were still coming back with negatives. There was one story after another. It was Magnus and Micromat. The trouble with Magnus and Micromat and the Martian Master Plan, Magnus and Micromat and the time traveling whatever it was.
Oh, I can't remember.
And the last one we did, I think it was the Martian Menace, wasn't it? And at that point, something very strange happened, going back to talking about Destiny with both of us, because at that point, after running Magnus for so long, and for costing us so much money in trying to advertise and get, companies interested, and we even had a computer company approach us to say they're interested.
Yes, this was before we reached the end. This was incredible because the local newspapers, had done an article on him, but very kind of them. They'd done this marvellous spread of him, and they've added illustrations from Philip and me, a copy of the book. And this went out, I think it went all over Bedfordshire.
Yes.
And we had a call from a company who were very interested in making him into a computer game, a video game.
Yeah.
And he said, I phoned him, they asked me to phone him, and I phoned him and he said, do you have a computer? Well, then, not many people did have a computer, a PC. We didn't have one. We certainly could afford one. Internet was new. I think it was 95 or 94. It was relatively new. Yeah. And he said, well, we'll get you set up with all that. Can you send me specs of your dogs? I want everything on him. So we did. We sent this gentleman who was obviously planning to produce this as a video game, a CD game, like puzzles and things like that. So we sent him all the information. We'd sent him the character analysis of the dog and all these illustrations, and it went pear-shaped.
Yes, and they actually said to us, with one of the top programmers, one of them was supposed to have worked for Disney.
Yeah, well, no, I don't know that, but he was one of the third best programmers at the time in the world with computer video games. They got him to do a dossier, and I still got the dossier of what they planned to do with this video game of Magnus the Micromutt, because the dog had a bum blaster, which means he's got a rocket in his bum. So, it's all humorous for children, so he can fly to a degree, but he's not very good. So he has arms in his back, as someone quite fondly said, "You're talking about Inspector Gadget." I said, well, yes, he came up before Inspector Gadget. It was copyrighted before Inspector Gadget.
So anyway, what happened was that when we reached the end of our production line of Magnus the Micromutt, we were disillusioned and a little bit broken, really, because we weren't making much money from the creation, and we couldn't get any publisher interested whatsoever. And I remembered one day that we'd had a little signing session, and I think we sold only 2 copies. We had about £6 in our pocket, and we both came home absolutely disillusioned. And I'll never forget what happened next, because this is in terms of destiny.
Well, we had decided prior to this happening that we're going to give up with him. We're going to try something else.
Yes.
That's what we had decided.
That's right. So both of us came back. I drove us back home. We were broke. I think, as I said, we had £6 in our pocket, and we had hardly any money to get us through the rest of the week. And I remember both of us sitting outside back of the house, and it was dark. The stars were out, and some clouds were there, and we broke down. We know each other too well as twins, enough as twins, and we were so broken that we started to cry, because this was a passionate dream.
10 years worth of pursuing him and nothing.
And then all of a sudden, something very strange happened. I suddenly saw the image of what I can only describe as an angel standing down by the garden gate. And then it felt like Ronald and I were both being held in someone's comforting hands. The only way I can explain it is it felt like that someone was holding us both.
Yes, but then the best is yet to come, because we both saw it, didn't we? You explain what we saw, formation of the clouds.
We looked up into the star-lit sky, and there was a cloud. And I was so shocked. I said to Ronnie, look up, look at that cloud. And do you know, it was in the exact shape of a lion's head. And where one of the eye sockets was, one of the stars, as the cloud was moving, still in its perfect form as a lion's face, shone in between the socket of the eye.
Twinkled.
And I knew at that point, I had this feeling at that point, that there was some type of divine intervention, that something somewhere was telling us, we know how you're feeling, and we're trying to help you.
What it is, I mean, it was an absolute, I can't describe it, I couldn't, but it's a perfect, it's like a sculpture of a lion's head. And where
brilliant.
These stars were twinkling through his eyes, it was very magical. It was quite surreal. But I knew, not at the time, but afterwards, it was a symbol, I think, of strength, of courage. As Lion was the king of the jungle, someone was giving us a sign to say, you must have strength and wiseness to carry on.
Yeah, and we did just that. We picked ourselves up, and because of that moment, I think a lot of people in life, whatever they want to do in life, whatever their vocation in life, sometimes if their heart's in it, their soul's in it, I do believe that those on the other side are able to step in to help us, which makes me believe, and I have always accepted the hypothesis, that there is something called destiny, that yes, we create our world, and whatever we do creates a bigger opening to that world. I mean, I could sit down and do nothing, and nothing will happen. But if I'm really set a goal, like, being a sports person or a TV personality or a musician or a dancer or an artist or a sculptor or an author, whatever, or a filmmaker, if your heart's in there, I really believe that somewhere along the line, the harder you push, the more, waves you create. Other people, other forces will be aware of that.
Yeah, the horror didn't end there with the dog. I mean, after that, we decided, someone approached us. We can't give any names for legal reasons, but someone approached us and they wanted to take him under their wing, which was very good of them. But what we ended up doing was basically this person wanted total, full control of the dog, even to the point of owning the copyright, and Philip and I couldn't have it. It was horrendous. I had to, and I'm going to say, I had to get out of that horrible predicament. This dog has been, the ladies and gentlemen would understand, an absolute curse for me at the moment. I love him to bits, but he was an absolute curse. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. They wanted to own copyright. It's the way they did it through the scripts that were to be sent off to companies, film companies, and I couldn't have this because Philip and I would have no status whatsoever. We'd lose the copyright. So Philip and I were threatened with court proceedings. So I had to pay a considerable sum of money back, and I didn't have any money. I had to go to the bank and borrow it. They said, you can contest it. I thought, no, to protect his copyright as in integrity, I thought I'll borrow the money and just pay it off, and that's where it ended with him. But we moved on, didn't we? We moved on to something new.
Yeah, and I know that when you were, trying to bang your head against the wall to think up new ideas of new creations, that we came up, didn't we, with the Rock Bottom Twins?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing because, again, being disillusioned by the whole process of being published and almost giving up to the point of despair. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I decided that we went away for a holiday for a few weeks. And we went to, I think it was, I don't know where it was, I can't remember, it was Norfolk or somewhere around that area. We went away for a couple of weeks and I was empty, I was broke, I had no ideas. And I was off for 2 weeks from work on holiday. And I actually said to myself, I said, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do. I've got no ideas. I'm broken. I've been used by people, and after 10 years, there was nothing happening. And all of a sudden, I saw these identical twin brothers broke, and but they live in this big old house, this rambling old house, and I saw them. They were rock bottom, so we decided to call them the Rock Bottom Twins, and they come up with this incredible, ingenious idea. Because they don't want to work, but they need money, they build a mechanical man, a robot, to earn money for them by acting as a skivvy, a cleaner. And so this is where the new idea was formed, and my God, did I not even imagine the absolute horror it would take to get that published. In fact, I don't mind telling you, when it was finished, it was a 64-page treatment, I think. The publishers wanted it even bigger because they said they needed a bit more substance to it, which we did do, but it was turned down. I mean, New York didn't want it, nor did London. It was turned down by 64 literary agents and publishers. But eventually, I wouldn't give up, because Philip and I are like dogs with bones in our mouths. We won't not give up. And we eventually found someone who agreed to publish it.
Yes, and that was quite amazing, because at that time I had been working on a spiritual book called Reaching for the Divine. And another little bit of destiny here for our listeners is the fact that these, after 20 years of rejections, literally, I know that we had the most gracious Dame Barbara Cartland try to help us.
She was wonderful.
She was absolutely wonderful. And she would send us letters of trying to push us forward. She even tried to get her agents to help us. But of course, God love her, she wrote romantic novels, and ours were children's books.
So they couldn't do it.
She graciously accepted our small offerings of Magnus and Micromut and tried to help us where that help was due. So we have a lot to thank the late Dame Barbara Cartland. But these two books, Reaching for the Divine, the Spiritual One, and the Rock Bottom Twins, were sent to two different publishers, and they were accepted one day apart from each other. And we were both floored, literally. And again, I feel that, a little bit of divineness came in there to help us out. So in the long term, for years and years of struggling, yes, we had to learn our craft like anyone else does, but I couldn't get away from the fact that we seem to be helped from an external force, which I now know to be what people will call destiny. And I do believe, definitely, that there are angels, there are spirit guides, there are loved ones who can help us sometimes on the other side, even scholars or learned men or women on the other side that can come in to help us.
I mean, with the Rock Bottom Twins, that was published in 2006, and I think your book, Reaching for the Divine, was published
a little bit later. It came out in 2007, even though they accepted one day apart from each other.
The local papers were, as usual, fantastic. I have nothing but praise for the papers. They've always supported Philip and myself. The Beds on Sunday, the Times Assistant, they've been absolutely wonderful. The local radio stations as well, absolutely smashing. Bedfordshire as a whole has been wonderful to me and Philip. We actually got on about Anglia.
Yeah.
And they did a feature on the Rockbottom Twins and Philip's book as well. A wonderful interview. I think it was about 4 minutes. It lasted. We got on there. But the Rockbottom Twins, because it entailed this robot. There again. See the robots from the past to the future. It entailed this robot which we named Ramshack.
Yes.
He starts off as being it's rather like a little bit of a no more brighter than a toaster, but he gets clever and smart. But I remember one review one of the papers did. They said that the Rockbottom Twins has absolutely no heroes in it whatsoever. They're very unheroic. They suffer from flatulence, and they have a robot who's got an attitude. I thought that was wonderful because it's absolutely quite true.
Yeah.
But then the publisher wanted a second one. So this is where one of our most favourite characters comes in. Is a huge mechanical elephant called Trunkaflunk. And they don't just build him on the whim of a fad or fancy. The twins in the books don't do that because they only build them for a reason or a purpose. If it's anything to gain anything, they'll do it. So they build him and they call him, as I said, Trunkaflunk. And he's colossal. And not only is
Trunkaflunk with attitude.
Yes, he's got attitude.
Yeah.
The ironic thing about these twins is, although they're arrogant and self-centered and quite pompous, the robots, unbeknownly, take on the same persona as them. So the elephant, because he's huge, is cocky. And he tries to put them in their place. So even though they're his masters, he's and they go to Africa on him for a reason to go through the Congo because they can't go in a car and they can't certainly go in a helicopter because they've got to go between the trees.
And there's a reason why they created him. As with everything that the Boogle and Buff Kingsman and the twins create their machines for reasons.
For gain.
Yeah, but it all goes pear-shaped.
Yes,
and a little bit pear-shaped.
We wrote something about that. But, I mean, these followed on to 3. We've done them as a trilogy now, haven't we? We've done the Rockbottom Twins, the Rockbottom Twins and the Nakabati Mission, and the Rockbottom Twins and the Rise of Ramshack, where we say the robot Ramshack actually has his moment, his imperial day, where he gets his own back on them. But we won't say anything about that because that would spoil it. But it's.
I know that we have just brought out, because we had the rights reverted back to us by the publishers.
Yes.
So I know that we've re-released the Rockbottom Twins and the Nakabati Mission. That's available on Amazon.
Now it is. Yes, it's beautiful. It's they've done it as quite a nice paperback. And also it features some of our newest illustrations, which we've gone digital. The front cover is done by myself, Ronnie. I spent ages sculpting the elephant the way I wanted him to look, the way I felt he should look, certainly regal and powerful and also frightening. I think that's important for children and adults as well, because it can be read by children and adults. And the one thing I'm pleased about, there's one thing I am pleased about, is years ago when we were writing these stories, people used to come and say, aren't they too complicated for children? Well, I'm not being unkind, but firstly, they're denouncing children's intelligence, and secondly, thank God for J.K. Rowling, because she proved that children did love to read big books, and not just thin things.
The brilliant J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, and I think also one of the drives is that... The other thing that's very interesting is that, people use the word imagination, but my argument is that it's not an imagination, it's actually mind. And I believe, because when people say, "Oh, you use your imagination for this," they think of imagination just something whimsical, or something that's not attainable. But it's all through mind consciousness. And I believe also that, this window of the mind, reaches the other side, reaches to these alternative worlds and dimensions. Yeah. Look at George Lucas with his Star Wars trilogy. I mean, that is an incredible,
everything
mindset.
Everything has its originality one way or another. I mean, I remember hearing some wonderful film producers complimenting Star Wars and doing a show on George Lucas and paying all due deference to him. And they were saying, I wished I'd thought up the idea, but I thought, no, because all different ideas are different.
Yes.
They're all genuine, all different ideas. It's like someone could say, I wished I'd thought up Alien, but you could carry on saying that again.
That was a brilliant.
But you see where I'm going. You can go on and on and on, it doesn't end. So it has its own time.
Yeah,
its own slot, and its own, hopefully, originality. But these stories of the twins they weren't just drummed up just to gain money or make a quick butt like twins.
It came from the heart.
It comes from the heart. When I'll explain the process, when I sit there, like Philip as well, when I sit there at the screen, I call in the cameraman. He's got to be in. because when I'm sitting there, I've got to see the house, and then it starts running. They show me like on this view of this dusty old hallway with these big double doors, and then it's your job to interpret that for people to understand in a very, very simple manner. People don't want to read complicated books, and also presentation is everything. I have found, and I've always known, that it's like anything. You can't have too many pictures, you can't have too many words. If it's a novel, yeah, that's fair enough, but when you're doing a children's book, I think half and half, or balance it out. That's the best way to do it. But it's rather like it's all psychological. It's like I've learned that when you go onto a website and you see it's got hundreds of words on, even I will not look at it. I won't even bother reading it.
No, I agree.
If it has a selection of pictures and an adequate amount of text to read, and is of interest, I will read it. It's rather like a book. Presentation is everything, you know? That's how I see it. You've got to, it's not just writing it, it's the way you present it as well. And God knows, when Philip and I were trying to sell the Rock Bottom Twins, as I said, New York didn't want it, neither did London. I sent it to New York. They weren't even remotely interested in it. You know, these identical twin brothers that had developed these machines, and they thought perhaps, you know, it's not the American style. But I thought, well, it's the British style. They're British. So we ironically came back to England with them, and we found someone in England.
Yes, that's right.
I'm not denouncing America for that. But I think certainly that, there's another thing they said as well. There's another thing. It doesn't fit in with our curriculum. Well, damn the curriculum. Would you follow a plan? It's going to be like a gamble. When you bet on a horse, that's what it's like.
Yeah.
If you want to win the lottery, you have to enter the lottery by buying a ticket. It's no different from that. You've got to take a gamble, you know. But a lot of them, I think it was worse. I think it was much worse in the late 90s and early 2000s. That was, for me, I felt the publishing industry was at its most, you could hardly get in. The agents were fully booked. The publishers didn't want to know. It was absolutely like treading water.
That's right. I mean, I know that, you know, in terms of our searching for our dream, our big dream and our goals, that we had some other very influential people help us. And one of the most wonderful letters I had was from the late Peter Cushing, OBE. And, you know, both Ronald and I wrote him to tell him how much we loved him as an actor. And I'll never forget that line in, you know, what was that film he starred in with the reptilian thing?
At the Earth's Core.
At the Earth's Core, when he stood there and he said, "You cannot mesmerize me, I'm British." And his letter that came back was so spiritual. And, you know, at that time, even all those years ago, I didn't realize that, you know, I was already starting to understand the concept of, you know, the future, spirituality, because I know that he missed his wife, Helen.
I think he was spiritual, wasn't he?
Oh, he said so in his letter. He couldn't wait to be with her. And, you know, it just goes to show, when I had that letter from Peter Cushing, we both did, I remembered realizing that, you know, this whole thing about destiny, about life after death, about spiritualism isn't just, you know, for you know, people who were then considered crazy. And actually, I found out it actually linked with a lot of, you know, lovely people. And going forward, I remembered a time when I was feeling very low, when I started doing, you know, my psychic work and the spiritualist work and going into churches. And I remember one weekend I was so low. I don't know what had happened, but I remembered coming out of work on the Monday, and it was deserted, really. And I was going up to this shop just to have a look in this shop, because I don't know what happened. I was very low, very disillusioned about my path where I was going. And there was this tall guy. I mean, he must have been over 6'3" or 4", all clad in this motorcycle kit. And he had no helmet or a bag, but he was just leaning against this lamppost looking at me. And I felt a little bit uncomfortable, thinking, do I know this chap? Have I seen him before? And previously on the Sunday, I'd done this church service of a small congregation that did go very well. And so anyway, that has relevance to the story. I came out of the shop and, you know, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just a bit all over the place, really. I just wanted to get out and have some time to think. Well, I walked down this narrow alley, and this guy comes thumping down behind me. You could hear his heavy boots, you know, and he grabbed me and turned me around, and he was huge. I mean, you know, he was any girl's pin-up, really, I suppose. And I remembered again, it's the same man with a motorcycle kit on, but no helmet, no rucksack. And he looked at me and he said, "Are you Philip Kinsella, the medium?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I am." He said, "I saw you work yesterday." And I looked, and I remember feeling shocked, thinking, "Well, I didn't see you there." And he said, "No." And he said, I have a message for you. And the message went something like, you've got to be strong, you've got to believe in what you're doing, because I'll always be there around for you. I didn't know who this guy was, didn't even know his name. And after a little bit of shock of being, given some really nice information and lovely compliments from this guy, I turned around and I stopped because I wanted to turn around again and thank him. And when I turned around, he had gone. Well, I am absolutely convinced that guy was an angel. And I will tell you, when I went back to work, I was telling everyone, yes, they did think I was crazy. But the guy said one thing very strange. He said, "You will see me one last time." So I haven't seen this angel yet.
Yeah, I mean, as we say, I mean, the past certainly does shape the future.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we also, when we went through the bad times, with the release of the Rock Bottom Twins in our books, we started having some luck because we had always been in contact from the 80s with David Saperstein.
Oh, yes.
The author of the international best-selling author of Cocoon.
Yes.
I mean, and he has been absolutely wonderful to me and Philip. He endorsed one of our science fiction novels about reptilian aliens called The Ungodly Agenda. But not only that, David is a prolific author himself.
Yes.
And he has mentored us for years now. I mean, he's mentored us.
He's a musician and a filmmaker as well.
As well, yes. I mean, he's absolutely wonderful. I mean, only this week we've had an email from him. So he is absolutely wonderful, goes to show. And also, the artists Boris Vallejo and Julie Bell, they endorsed the Rock Bottom Twins and the Narkabati Mission, the first print that was done by the publishers, not the reprint we've done with Amazon, but we have used their endorsement on that in their honour. They supported and encouraged us as well, which was amazing. And they are absolutely fantastic. Well, they're leading science fiction and fantasy artists themselves.
Yes.
So it goes to show the road you take is amazing because of the people you also meet. And it's funny because I used to see Boris and Julie's paintings when I was a kid in these books. We never thought we'd be connected. And when we saw Cocoon, the film Cocoon, we never thought we'd be connected with David Saperstein.
And we'll tell the listeners that our Christmas present, we went out to buy each other a Christmas present. And on Christmas Day, we opened the presents, and they were both the same book, Cocoon, by David Saperstein.
Now,
and that was
weird.
And that was when the film had just come out on the big screens.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, I love the film.
Yes, well, he has been absolutely wonderful. He still is, to be Philip. And as I said, we're reissuing the Rock Bottom Twin books. We can't do The Rise of Ramsha because that's still available. That was a good one as well. I think that
by
was
another publisher,
by a publishing company. But when we have the rise back to that, it will complete the new trilogy because we're formatting them similar. And Philip, you're bringing out a book this year, aren't you?
Yeah, I hopefully should have it out in the next couple of months. I wanted to continue my research into the UFO and psychic field, and it's called A Passage Through Eternity, and it deals with the dead, UFOs and aliens, and it's kind of like autobiographical, but I also wanted to draw some very interesting parallels into the research that I've been doing with regards to life after death and the soul, and I know also that it will hopefully appeal to a lot of the audiences. It's very honest, black and white and truthful, and I have Malcolm Robinson, who has written the foreword.
Oh, he's a lovely man.
A brilliant author, and he's a true Scotsman, and he's written some fantastic UFO books.
He's been on radio and television, hasn't he, as well?
And he was the first Scotsman to go down in the Loch Ness to try and look for the monster as well. So he is an absolutely wonderful asset to the book, and I've been in contact with him just recently, or he asked me when the book was out. I must admit it did go over a deadline a little bit, but we're just finishing off a few tweaks before we bring that out. So that hopefully should be available for anyone if they're interested on Amazon, because I know that our other books have been brought out by other publishers, but I wanted to bring this one out on my own. I wanted to bring this out through Amazon and see what it does.
Do it the way you want it.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, this is the wonderful thing about Amazon. I mean, as I said, the Rock Bottom Twins have been re-released by them. The good thing is you can do them the way you want them. The publishers did a wonderful job. It's just we're setting them out and having new covers on and things like that. I mean, I myself am just finishing off a book about demons. It's taken ages. It's taken nearly 3 years now, I think, to write, because I think it was one of the hardest books I've ever written.
Yeah.
It's almost, we've only got 4 chapters left to do, but it's called The Archons. And it's not demons as you think in the traditional sense, more of the modern sense, I think. I'm trying a little bit of horror now rather than the children's or science fiction.
Yeah, so, you can see, even from my brother and myself, that in our life we do believe in the question of destiny, that life to a degree is preordained. We can muck it up if we want to, and sometimes some people come in to do just that. But if you have a belief, if you have a dream, always stick with that.
Yes.
And believe in yourself, because there is such thing as destiny, and you are the master of your own destiny.
Yes, but I do tend to think that we are steered. I mean, it's like at school, when I was with the teacher, she was, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, she didn't like me. She didn't like me at all. I was lazy, and I didn't do my homework, but as I said, I was frightened of the world. I couldn't even do maths. She used to lean over you when she did fractions, and I hated that. It was that great big coffee mug she used to have on her desk. I mean, when I cheated at spelling, I don't mind telling you, I marked my own paper. And we had a series of 20 questions, like spelling.
I know where this is going, and I remember it.
If we didn't pass, we didn't get games on Friday. Well, I didn't particularly like games either, but she asked us to swap the papers over to be marked by the people next to us. Well, I didn't have anyone next to me, so I stupidly just ticked them myself. And she said, "How many did you get, Ronald?" I said, "I think it was 16." And she looked up above the rim of her glasses, her reading glasses. "That's very good. Who marked your paper?" I did. "Bring it here." So I took it over there. I don't mind telling you, I nearly wet myself. I was horrified. I was 9 years old. And she looked at me, she said, "Right, you can stand with your nose pressed against the blackboard. Class, we have a cheat." Well, my goodness, did I pay for that? I mean, she was formidable. She was and I don't mind telling you that she actually washed a pupil's mouth out with soap. Yes, with soap. It's the only time I've ever seen it happen, because he's sworn, of course, he's not going to go back and tell his parents he's sworn, is he? Because they're going to give him a good hiding. And then the cane and the punishment like that was well in force. So, but needless to say, I missed games, and I had to write each word out. I think it was 500 times. I can tell you after that I didn't choose spelling, but she didn't like me, because when I returned from high school to see my sisters play, those horrible remarks she made.
Was it the teacher, Mr. Charles, who lent us all those paranormal magazines when we went on a summer holiday once?
Oh, he was smashing. That was at high school.
Yeah, there was a teacher there who knew of mine and Ronald's interest in UFOs and anything that was spooky. And I remember Miss Horton came with us to go and see Mr. Charles, because he had something for us to take away on our holiday. And we
Summer
promised
holiday.
that we would look after these magazines. And there was a huge collection of these paranormal magazines. And when I think back now, I'm thinking, that kind of like set the scene. I had no idea that this wonderful teacher, Mr. Charles, was into all this. And I remembered on our holidays, we devoured through these stories in this magazine, and I read everything I could get my hands on with regards to the paranormal. And I think it's more to do with purpose, more to do with, your being here on the earth. And, I don't subscribe to this fact that we're just randomly here and brought on by chance like the universe. I've always believed that each and every one of us are unique, are special, and we have that God force in us that propels us. You see it sometimes when there's a tragic situation and someone suddenly becomes superhuman, or someone is really down on their chips and they find the most amazing way to bring themselves back onto the correct path. So there are true troopers out there who really do utilize the power inherent within them, called the soul. Who are there to help the sick, the lonely, the poor, the hungry, and also those wonderful, troops in our war zones that are, protecting us and looking after us. So I really believe that there's a lot of angels already walking on the earth, and have done for a very long time.
Yes, I've never met anyone like what you said, the chap with the gear on, because it is so distinct you would have recognised him at that church service, and you said he wasn't there, so that's extraordinary.
It was stunning. He stood out like a...
Well, that's the whole point. You would have known he was there and he hasn't. Yeah. And then he just vanished when you turned your back through this alleyway.
My guardian angel.
It's quite possible. I've never met mine. But I will say that when people hear that, when we say ourselves, we've written books, which I don't often tell people, because there's this thing now in the world where you have to be very careful what you say because you might be blowing your own trumpet.
Yes, yes.
A lot of people don't like it because they put their noses out. But we have lived in a time, in an age where, strife was absolute common. The horrors we went through, and that's only this on this radio show is just listing a few of the horrors we went through with the unscrupulous people we've come across, the wonderful people, and also the absolute horrors you have to go through to try and get published. People don't realise that the Rock Bottom Twins was turned down by 63 or 64.
64 publishers.
Different publishers. That took, I think, 2.5 years to get published because I was selling them as fast as they were coming back. And you had to keep finding postage then to keep posting them off. Some you never heard from, others were quite rude. I remembered one Scottish literary agent we sent it to told us we'd sent them the revised treatment of the Rock Bottom Twins, and they said it's too wacky and off the wall. They had expressed interest in it, although they were very selective. They said, well, we've read the first 2 chapters. We're not sure, but send the rest, and the chances are we're not going to take it, but just out of keen interest. Well, I smiled when I sent it. And I actually got in contact with them 6 months later because I never heard from them. They accused me of pestering them. And I assured them I had never written to them before, but they were adamant. I think what it was, a case of mistaken identity. They'd got us mixed up with someone else, and they basically just threw the book back in our face and said, it's too wacky and off the wall, and so we won't be making an offer for it. My goodness, it must be such a godly position, being in a place like that.
Yeah, so the message to all our listeners out there is that if you have a dream, however small, however large, if you believe that dream is unattainable, you must believe in yourself and trust both Ronald and I when we tell you that you are a power greater than the universe. You are the Godhead, the God force, the God light. You have it in you to create your reality. And yes, you'll go through the bad times. I think sometimes to remind us of, just when we get to that good time, that it was worth our journey. And I've met many people that come up to me asking me, about their future. We can't always see all the future. We're not allowed to. But I believe that it's inherent in every one of us. So, keep believing in yourself, in your dreams, and, where the paranormal's concerned, it's great to still dig. As they say to, Mulder in the X-Files, keep digging. So that's our message to all of you, and we hope you've enjoyed our program tonight.
Yes.
And we've enjoyed being with you and sharing just a few of the things that we've encountered. I'm sure that all of you have got some really great stories to tell about your difficulties and your struggle to find your dream or your passion, or wherever it is that life is taking.
Yes, it still goes on. I mean, even today it still goes on, the pitfalls and horrors of trying to find new people to publish your work. But thank goodness for Amazon.
So anyway, you can find Ronnie on his website, www.ronaldkinsella.com, and my website, Philip Kinsella. And you can also find our books on Amazon.
Yeah, you can see my art as well. You can see what the elephant looks like and the dog. I mean, I've done them as digital renderings now. One person actually said, just out of interest, they actually said they heard I was using computers to do art, and they said I cheated. I'd like to ask him how you can cheat doing a thing like that, especially using ZBrush, because you have to start from scratch. It's like a ball of clay where you have to stretch and shape. So please do look at my own renderings, and see what you think of them. And please do write to me as well. I've got a box on there where you can message me, on my website. I don't use social media much anymore, but the website's on there.
Yeah, so we want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. And next month we're going to be speaking to someone about mysteries on the moon, and I'm sure that we'll find that really interesting. You've been listening to Twin Souls in association with the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Stay safe, believe in your dreams, and we'll catch up with you guys next month. Thank you.